President sending more artillery over there.
They're escalating.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
If they're going to do it, they need to do it quick and get it over with.
I think this is going to be.
Don't drag it out. That's what we did in Afghanistan, and it ended up backfiring.
Afghanistan was bad. Afghanistan's been bad for anybody that's tried to go over there.
Well, look at Russia. Look at everybody that's ever tried to go in there and change the way those folks live. It's never worked and never will.
Mike McDaniel said Tonga will be seeing more specialists this week. Miami does not have a game this week. The earliest Tonga will return will be week 8. Jared Max, Fox News. So those boardwalks Park and the New Jersey Shore is shutting down after generations. Jillian's Wonderland here in Ocean City closed last night. Jay Jillian, who was once the city's mayor, says he tried to open but determined it was no longer viable. It's owned now by a hotel company, but the city has ruled out opening a hotel nearby. I'm Lisa Lissera. This is Fox News.
We do look like we match on that live stream.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Taylor, and I'm the chairman of the Lawrence County Republican Party.
And I'm Chris Jackson, chairman of the Lawrence County Democratic Party.
And we've been putting on a show for the last 3 weeks. This is our fourth show of just coming in and having a little bit of conversation. We don't agree on a lot of things. Some things we do agree, and I've been surprised about some of the issues that you and I agree on. Sure, honestly,
we're even wearing matching shirts today. So look at the common ground we're finding.
We didn't coordinate it.
No,
so
unfortunately,
there you go. We'll probably be accused of that, but anyways. So the hour goes pretty fast, Chris. I know we got several things we want to talk about. And for everyone that maybe this is the first time listening, Chris and I, just give a little back knowledge. We really don't know each other that well. Chris, I probably haven't talked to you just very few times. Most of the conversations I've had with you have been live here on the radio and streaming on Facebook. So I've got to know you here on the radio, and I'm going to start off, and I'm going to poke at you a little bit. Today's Columbus Day, and I'll let you take up for her all you want, but Kamala Harris, I'm sorry, as you would refer to her.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Or Madam President.
She would like to change it today to Indigenous Peoples Day.
Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yeah. So that would, I'm just going to give you a chance to comment on that, because just wonder what your thoughts were if you think Columbus Day is a bad idea.
I generally don't support holidays that I can't spell. And I would have a tough one with Indigenous, probably. But no, I think we need to leave it alone. I think that's one of those things where the Democrats go way off into left field that really don't make much sense. I think we can all agree that most of the Indigenous people in this country were horribly mistreated, but Columbus did do some good things in discovering the country and the Spanish heritage that he brought. I think we need to commemorate that. And President Biden even acknowledged that through a proclamation today for Columbus Day. So I stand on the side of Columbus Day. Well, if anybody wants to celebrate Indigenous People Day, they can on a separate thing. But I think we need to keep it Columbus Day.
Well, for me, and I think I speak for a lot of conservatives, I'm really just kind of tired of the renaming process of trying to rename everything in our country. We have a lot of new things coming on board. Things are being created and done, and if you start renaming things, I mean, where does it stop? If you take the name Washington off of everything, then before long you're going to have to rename our nation's capital.
Yeah,
we would no longer be able to call it Washington D.C. So, and then you have to replace it. And if you name it after some other person, you're going to name it after a person that definitely has imperfections, because we all do.
Oh, absolutely. And and like you said, are you going to pick and choose who you do that to? Because while Abraham Lincoln was great, there's still some statements that he made about
he was a Republican.
He was probably the best Republican. He would be a Democrat now, though. But he had statements that he had made in the past about slavery and stuff that wouldn't jive now. And same with Washington, who owned slaves. And there's a lot of people that made a lot of great contributions to this country that in today's society we wouldn't agree with.
Sure.
So you can't whitewash history. You can't totally take away what this country's been about and what it's done. There's been some dark times in this country, and we need to learn from it. But we have to remember it. I don't think you can totally just forget the past and try to act like it didn't happen. It's important to realize to remember what happened so we don't do it again.
Learn from it, absolutely.
Yeah.
So NBC Trump polls even with Harris. Did you
Yeah.
see that today in the news?
I did yesterday. Actually, three national polls. Harris was still tied or leading in all three, but margins are getting smaller. So basically, they're in a statistical dead heat. Each week, we give you guys an update on the polling nationally and around the country, and I just pulled the latest averages before we got in here. On the average of the national race, Harris is up by about 2.5%. But like we said, that usually doesn't matter because we don't go by the popular vote in this country. It's decided by just a few swing states in the Electoral College. Georgia, they're basically knotted up at 47. Michigan, Harris has a .1 lead. .1. Just another coin flip. Pennsylvania, Trump is pulled ahead by .1. Wisconsin, Harris is .3.
I'm not surprised about Pennsylvania. Are you?
It's going to be very close, and you've got a lot of rural areas in that state that Trump does well in, just like Tennessee. And the problem the Democrats have had over the past 10 or 12 years is they're losing rural areas by more and more, the bigger margins. And it's tough. I mean, you can only get so many votes out of Philly and other urban areas in Pennsylvania. When you start losing those rural counties 80-20 and 85-15, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens there, but he's pulled a little bit ahead now. In Nevada, Trump's ahead by 0.5%. North Carolina, Trump's up by 1.5%. Arizona, he's up by 1.5%. So based on those averages, even though Trump has just a 10th of a point lead in Pennsylvania, that would give him the presidency about 275 to 262. Now, of course, it's Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is what they're going to call the tipping point, because they're pretty confident that he will do well in Michigan and Wisconsin. He has to have Pennsylvania to win. So that is going to be the state that will likely decide it all one way or the other. And if he can't get that, the race is open.
Well, you were feeling pretty good about Harris last week, and I told you I felt like Trump had a tailwind behind him.
Yeah,
and I think I'm still seeing that momentum going. What's your take on the race right now?
I've always said it was going to be a razor thin race, and I still stand by that. That's why I got so aggravated at some of my fellow Democrats back in July when they were panicking because Biden was 2 points down. They acted like the race was over, but the race hadn't even started yet.
That's correct.
Look at what's happened since July, since the debate. You've had 2 assassination attempts. One party changed their candidates. We've had what, a debate on the presidential side, a debate on the vice presidential side. People don't even remember the debate with Trump and Biden at this point. The news lasts like 5 days in this country at this point.
No, I'm going to take
short term.
Chris, I still remember it. It was. Felt bad for Biden during that. I'll just be.
Well, he was sick.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to tell
you, he won both debates in 2020, and he admitted he didn't have his best debate. He ended up having COVID a few days later. So I don't think any of us perform best when we're sick, but he admitted he could have done better. But I think
Biden could have done better. I'm just telling you. I've seen him do better than what he's done, and I think he's had a lot of health issues for sure.
It's going to be interesting if the Democratic Party loses this race. What the people who put him out are going to say then.
I feel like the Democrat Party has an experiment. Democratic Party. And yeah, you're right. And you know what? I've been working on that, Chris. I really have. I have been working on that. But the Democratic Party, I feel like they have tried a political experiment.
It's never been done.
This has never been done. I think they were really worried about Biden being able to deliver a win against Trump. Even though he was a sitting incumbent president, I mean, that would have been strong. He had a strong running, to go in with. But I think they were stressed, and I think the debate was a tipping point for them. I think when they saw him in the debate, his performance, he looked elderly. He had a feeble look to him. And I think they started to get stressed, and when they pulled his support for him, I think they said, well, we're going to try anything because we know we're going to lose if we go with Biden.
Right.
I'm not sure how he would have played out, later on. I'm not sure. I know that Harris
polls are really close to where they were when he dropped out. Trump was probably ahead of 1.5 to 2% at that time. Now they're dead even. So, like I said, the race hadn't even got started. The presidential race,
it was early in the race
until after Labor Day.
Well, we hadn't been through our conventions yet.
Yeah,
Right.
Absolutely.
So both those things happened, and who would have thought? I think it was the following week that's when Trump had an assassination attempt, and so yeah, that was a big deal. Um, and you mentioned the electoral college, and you've got Harris running mate Tim Walz. He's saying he would like to do away with electoral college, and well, I hear that coming from the Democrat Party quite a bit, but I don't hear it coming from Republicans.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. I think the electoral college is very important.
I haven't really looked at it enough to make a definite answer on that. I don't think the governor should probably be talking about that during the middle of an election where you have to win the electoral college, personally. But
I have to say that was talk about bad time.
yeah,
Sometimes you just need to be quiet when you got the microphone.
he kind of has a
But yeah,
Chris
that was.
Jackson problem of saying things.
Is that what it is?
Apparently he does, but you know, uh, Al Gore would say that you probably would want to get rid of the electoral college. So would Hillary Clinton, but there are some pros to it. There are not as many pros as there were back in the 1700s when it came into fruition. So I would be open to a debate about reform, and I'm sure the Republicans would be too if they won the popular vote and lost the electoral college. You
Right.
guys have never been through that like us.
Well, I
They
think
change your
that
mind.
if you get rid of the electoral college, though, I think for people like us right here in Lawrence County, I think you're really delegitimizing their vote because it's going to be hard to go against these heavy populated areas. California has a very high population.
But on the flip side, you would expand the map where these candidates have to work in from just a few swing states to going out into more states to campaign.
Now that is true. They
mean,
have to get on
When's the last time
road a little more.
one of Trump or Harris has been really to a state that's not a swing state?
No, they're not.
They're camping out in just about
That's
swing
right.
states,
That's right.
while the rest of us watch it.
And they have to, and they're going to spend
Absolutely.
millions of dollars on advertisements in those states.
Literally billions.
Yes, and so it's a big thing. It's a money making. Let's be honest. They're an industry,
Oh,
and they're a money making industry, and not always necessarily for the candidate, but there's a lot of people that get rich through the election cycle.
Advertisers.
That's right. They get rich on this. So I don't know. I don't know how that would look. I would really have to sit down and think about removing the electoral college. Up front, my knee-jerk reaction on that is we need electoral college. I think it keeps a balance. We are a republic. I know a lot of the Democratic Party like to say we're a democracy, but
Democratic Republic.
we're
meet halfway.
okay. So, but we're a republic, so we have representation that goes on our behalf that we elect, and we elect representation.
Still don't like the fact that the two Dakotas, who has the population of Columbia, has 4 senators, though. That always gripes me when California would, if it was its own country, be the like 5th or 6th largest country in the world, only has 2.
California is a very large state. I think
crazy.
people here on our side of the United States, from this side of Mississippi, if you will, we don't realize that traveling across California is like going from Atlanta to New York City.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I'm exaggerating on that. That's when you think about,
And there are a lot of conservative areas there too. A lot of rural areas.
conservative areas in California. One of my friends, we were talking about, he's actually lived in California for decades, living here now in Tennessee, but he was telling me about all the conservatism that actually is in place. And actually what he said there's a lot of good old country boys that are farmers that wish they could have a firearm and they can't in California. Literally, that's what the conversation was. So yeah, I'm not for getting rid of the electoral college. And when I hear them say that, I hear wanting to make big changes because that's a big change to our election.
It'd be a fundamental change. It have to be
Yes.
done in a very deliberate manner, and it's one of those decisions that you don't want to make easy.
Yep.
It needs to be thoroughly done, and I think it has to be, through a convention of the states, or a constitutional amendment, which I don't think you'll get done in Congress because you'd have to have 65 or 70 senators to sign on.
That's right. And on the polling, I like to talk about this because I feel like people put their money where their heart is sometimes. I'm just being honest. The betting markets are showing Trump. Leaning toward Trump quite a bit. I mean, I think right now today, if you want to get $100 bet, if you want to make $100 off Trump winning, you would have to bet $140. I think that's the way it is right
So
now.
what you're saying, it'd be a good pick for Kamala
Well,
if you wanted to make money.
if you want to lose money,
If you want to make money,
because you're going to
if
lose.
she wins with the underdog, you get the bigger pot.
How much would you put on? Are you a gambling man, Chris?
Actually put money, the Predict website, it's semi betting, semi odds. I played that last time and I did well because I bet They put money on Biden, and I actually won some of the swing states. And it got really monotonous on some of those swing states because, for a couple of days, some of them were showing Trump when the early votes hadn't came in, and then they swung to Biden. So I ended up doing pretty well. This time, I think it's going to be a lot closer.
I'm not a gambler. I don't gamble on that, but I think that's
I
kind
only
of.
gamble when I think I can win.
I understand that. That's probably a less of a gamble, isn't it? That's
Right.
uh, so you see that, you see the betting markets go with that, and like I said, I don't put money on it, but people are going to be putting their money where they really feel like their best chances are, and
Yeah.
I think people are starting to see this as moving for Trump. I think the election cycle is moving for Trump,
And even
um,
just as important as the presidency is the control of Congress.
right.
I know we hadn't really touched on that the last few weeks,
We
but
haven't said anything about it. I don't believe.
it looks like the Republicans are going to be projected right now, if the polls are correct, to have a 51-49 majority, which is basically flipped from where it's at now because Joe Manchin's seat in West Virginia is going to go from the D's to the R's, and it looks like Montana is going to flip from the Democrats to the Republicans with John Tester. There's still a few of them on both sides that are within 4 or 5, not likely to flip, but they could. And it looks like the Democrats are projected to have a small House majority.
Yeah.
So looks like maybe divided government in Congress. And we'll see who the president is.
Yeah, if it flipped, it would be ironic if it flipped. Republicans lose control of the House, gain control of the Senate.
I would rather have control of the Senate. I mean, that's what the judges are.
Right.
You got to have judges confirmed. You got to have your cabinet confirmed.
So really, what we need, if you could agree with me on this, we need to get Trump elected. We need to get the Senate, and we need to get more conservative judges on that Supreme Court. I think we could do a lot better in this country. That's what I'm going to hope for. That's what I'm going in for.
If Trump does get elected, at least there will be a check on him, and both sides. I think divided government can work. It's worked in the past. Even during the past 2 years, it's worked. You see things like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act that President Biden was able to get through, the Chips and Science Act that bipartisan people came together on. So there's been a lot of. It doesn't make the news a lot because it's not quote unquote sexy legislation,
right?
But it's smart legislation and it actually has real results. So if people want to get things done, that's what you have to do.
Well, you and I sitting down doing this show. A lot of people had questions about it when we first got started, but it's disagreements. We can handle that.
Yeah.
Actually, disagreements, there's nothing wrong with having disagreements. But I'll tell you where I think the downfall of this country will rest, and that's the censorship. We cannot stop people from having a different opinion. We actually need to say, hey, I will fight for your right to disagree with me.
Yeah.
I will stand up for Chris Jackson's right to have freedom of speech in this country. And in turn, I would hope Chris Jackson would stand up for Brandon's right and say, you know what? I want him to have the right to say what he feels.
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe that we should be threatening each other's lives or things like that. Yeah. It's a difference in sharing your opinion,
sure,
and then just pouring out raw emotion and being violent. I don't mean that.
Yeah,
what I mean
on the First Amendment.
I get what you're saying, but I want people. The check shouldn't be that we censorship people for saying something we don't like, and I think that's starting to happen in this country more. And it's dividing us more. And
I think the left gets accused of that because there's so much disinformation out there. Oh, Lord, I don't even know where you get started on it. You go on social media. It's just like we talked about last week with the FEMA stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's information that's pumped out there by political parties and candidates. It has real life consequences. You and I were talking before the show started. We talked about this last week with FEMA. And today, sure enough, a news story came out in North Carolina, I believe it was. It actually had some consequences. People making threats on FEMA workers.
I think people actually went, and I haven't dug into this because I worked today, you work today, but I saw it and they were saying armed militia. And I was like, what are they trying to say here?
It's crazy. It's a fringe group, a fringe guy that was arrested, but those are usually the ones that end up doing something crazy. He threatened workers. And what did that do? It prevented people from getting the aid that they need. Those offices had to shut down for a day or 2 days in North Carolina when people needed it. So, my advice to people, quit being stupid. If you know something's not true, don't share it just because it aligns with your views.
Well, I want to come back on something to say, though. I have seen some of this to be true. And I think some of this has happened in North Carolina and what's been coming out. And look, and I love first responders. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working to get a FEMA appointed distribution at West End Community Center, so I'm not coming in this trying to say I've got an angle.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think the scope of the devastation, it covered 2 states. It was crazy to see what had happened. It was devastating. You have the three days of, you go through the different emotions as you're in the middle of this. But from what I've seen, I think where FEMA got in trouble was they did not have coordination with local and state governments to get things out there. And I think communication is one of those. It's a big deal. Personally, that's why I'm working with West End Community Center to create a point of distribution, it's called a pod, and that's where they bring supplies, they bring things to the community. I'm already on the front end of this, and I don't want to take all the credit for it, but the West End Community Center, we're working to try to get that place set up to where we already have communication in line.
Be a great spot because all the tornadoes that come through there.
We have a terrible, well, and we could help Wayne County, we could help Giles County, we'd help a lot of different counties be willing to do that. But we're trying to go ahead and establish that communication now. So I'm going to tell you what I like to say to our community, because we're talking to Lawrence County citizens. You know what? I don't want to just critique FEMA. Okay, I can come apart and say, I didn't like this, I didn't like that. There's some things I didn't like. A lot of things I did like, some things I did not like. But what I would like to say to this community is, let's learn from it.
Yeah.
We don't have to make the same mistakes here. And we're foolish to think that we're beyond having flooding to that degree here.
Yeah.
I mean, David Crockett left Lawrence County because of flooding. Okay. I mean, he was washed away the meal he had here at Crockett State Park.
It could happen anywhere.
It could happen anywhere. And I'm a little bit older than you, Chris, but I remember the day that I believe it was in 1996, 97, 98, somewhere in that time frame. We had terrible flooding, and the driver's license office was on West Gaines, old Highway 64. And normally, as I was going to work, it was on the left side of the road. And one morning, I came through, and that entire building, it was a brick building. It was not a huge building, but the entire structure was on the right-hand side of the road.
Yeah.
And the concrete pad where it was setting was still on the left side of the road. And I was up just some pipe sticking about.
Remember how devastating that flood was for us?
That was devastating.
That was 8 inches of rain. They had 30.
That's right.
30.
So
4 times as much almost.
Hard to imagine what would happen here in this community. So what I want to say to our community is let's prepare ourselves for things like that. God forbid we have to have it, but when we do, it would make situations like this flow a lot smoother. Clark County people are smart. They know how to take care of themselves. But we have to be able to work with state, local, federal officials when they come in. You can't just tell FEMA you're not going to come here. That's not going to work.
No, and I think overall you've had good cooperation. I think FEMA and the president have done well. I think Governor DeSantis in Florida did well with Milton down there. I think that, Governor in North Carolina and South Carolina have done well. It's just a tough situation that nobody's prepared for. And there are things that come up when this happens that you don't anticipate. The best thing you can do is, like you said, just be as prepared as you can.
Right. Well, I think I said this last week, and I still believe, and we had Milton come through. I don't even know. My life's a blur right now. I'm so busy, but we had Hurricane Milton come through. But I believe that these 2 hurricanes will probably have a negative effect for Harris on the ticket this year.
Usually things don't like that don't help. Maybe years ago it would have been to their benefit because people rallied around people in office, but that's not the society we live in anymore. People want to critique everything. Nothing's ever fast enough, big enough, or whatever, and that's why a lot of people don't want to run for these offices anymore.
People used to be a lot more self-sustaining.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they were a lot more self-sustaining.
They didn't expect it to be.
And my grandparents, your grandparents, if they had to go without electricity for 2 or 3 days,
what happens now?
They were okay.
Without power for an hour.
They were okay.
My son's hollering, when is the internet coming back on so I can play Minecraft?
That's right.
So it has a different world we live in.
It has a different impact on people today than it used to. Absolutely. Let's see. So I'm gonna ask your opinion on this one. A new California law prohibits local election sites from actually looking at voter identification or requesting voter identification.
Yeah.
They've been banned from doing that. I think that's a bad move, and I'm hoping California does not start a trend. What's your thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, reading into it, I have no problem with voter ID, as I said a couple of weeks ago. I think it makes sense in most cases. there are some issues that I think states, when they put in a voter ID law, that they need to look at, like the distance some people are from. It's like here, we have to travel a good ways now to get a driver's license. That's the case in a lot of these areas that have that. So you need to be cognizant of that when you put these laws into effect, because most of the time it's low income minorities and even the elderly that don't have a photo ID if they don't. But I support photo ID. But this law, the way I understood it, it would give localities and counties the ability to make voter ID laws. Is that right?
Well,
Which is kind of different than most of the time it's done, because it's done at the state level. Like
exactly. Let me back up on it though, because one thing that I thought was just that kind of puzzles me. You have to have an ID to get a voter registration card. Okay, that's part of this law. You have to have a voter ID to get. You have to have an ID to get a voter registration to register to vote. Let me be clear. And then, but yet when you get to the poll, you don't have to have any identification. So they've already required the people, for the citizens, to have a photo ID. It's like when you come to the polls, what we want and what I want and what I feel like a lot of people want in this country, doesn't matter your party affiliation, is we want free and fair elections.
Sure.
And the only way you can do that and is removing the doubt of people saying, you know what, I think somebody cheated. Well, if you have someone showing their identification before they vote and they're walking up, they're a registered voter, and I believe a legal citizen of the United States, then they walk up to the polling station, they show their ID, then they go vote. I don't know why. I don't know why California would say, "Well, you got to have an ID to register to vote," but then no, we're not going to require you to have it when you come to vote. Because we know what it sounds like to me. Multiple people could go in there and vote with the same voter registration card. How could you prove they didn't? Is my question.
Well, I think you have checks of residency I mean, just like we used to in this state. We haven't always had voter or photo ID. So, we used to just have the card when we went there, and they would look you up in the book. And there's been studies on this time and time again. There's very little fraud, if any, in states that don't have photo ID. I just think, like you think, it had that extra check against fraud in the states that do. Nothing wrong with that. Like I said, we can address the problems that come with it. That's fine. But, you guys, and you should be commended worrying about voter fraud and things like that during the election. I hope you'll join me in saying that we shouldn't have questioning of a certifiably legitimate election afterwards, like we did last time on January 6th.
Well, I will.
And I can ever remember in U.S. history where we had a sitting president try to overturn the will of the people.
Well, 2000, you had Al Gore. He protested the election, and
he exhausted all of his legal avenues, just like Donald Trump did, and he conceded for the good of the country. Trump incited a mob to attack police in the Capitol,
but they wouldn't let him investigate.
And then he tried to add fake electors.
And let me add one more to you, because there's other states that don't require ID. New Mexico's another one that doesn't require ID. Now, you did say the other day you thought every state it did, but they don't. And when you start having these states that are not requiring IDs, and now in Tennessee, we're meeting a lot of people that are coming here to Lawrence County. I'm meeting a lot of conservative people that are coming here. They're getting the heck out of California.
Those are the ones that are moving. They're moving from blue areas because they want to get.
And I'll speak to the California people that are moving here. I mean, we need you to stand up in the state of Tennessee and fight against anything that's taking our freedoms here. I'll speak for that on the conservative side. Don't just come here and hide. We want people to be active, and let's get vocal in our state and our community. But I will say this about the state of Tennessee, and especially Lawrence County. Our voting machines that we have here, I really like them. I think they're very good.
Yeah.
I wish we had these across all the United States. I like the way they do the transfer of the information. It actually works as keeps a paper tabulator. You don't get a paper ballot,
right?
But it gets a tab. And when I actually saw it for the first time, I was like, you know what? Somebody is a lot smarter than me came up with this machine, and I thought it was really neat the way they had it where you could look at the ballot at the end and you could.
Foolproof. I served on the election commission about 2 years, and let me tell you, there's no way. I won't say 100% because anything is possible, but there's very little way that anything could be manipulated here in Tennessee, especially in Lawrence County. The staff does a great job. The board does a great job, and like you said, the technology. You have the digital side of it, and then you have the paper side of it, and everything that's done on an election board. You have a Democrat and a Republican that has to certify that. So, people saying, well, a Democrat could rig this or whatever. No, because usually there's 5 members on an election board. And in Tennessee, there's 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats in each county because Republicans control the legislature.
Right.
So unless there's a Republican helping them do something, it ain't gonna happen.
Right.
There's a check and a balance, and that's the way it should be.
Well, even our local election, commission office, they invite us to come up and take a look at the
Yep.
machines. They're very,
You
very
probably got a letter not too long
I
ago.
did. And I appreciate everything they do. I want to brag on Lawrence County, our election commission here, and
Yep.
I want to brag on those that work over the election office. They do an excellent job. I look forward to voting early. I look forward to seeing how these machines are doing again this time. But this paper tabulator that works along with it, I think it's an answer for if you had any kind of system failure, you've got a backup that tells what it is. And I wouldn't want to be the one that has to sit there and count those votes.
Right.
But I'm glad that we would have it. And that actually, when it comes out of that machine, for folks that don't know, I know you know, but when it comes out of that machine, that tabulator, that roll of paper, and I liken it to the old adding machines tabulator where it's rolling the paper up, it's coming off a fresh low, and it's rolling it back up. That roll is sealed, and signed with witnesses. So even the roll the paper is sealed and put away and dated. With a tamper-proof seal on that. So I really like what Tennessee.
Everything in that office is locked up until election day. There's a box for absentee ballots. There's a box for provisional ballots. There's 2 locks on each of those. The Democrats have a set of keys. Republicans have a set of keys. Nobody's getting to them unless you get both of them.
That's right.
So it's a good system.
It is a good system. I wish I'd seen it. I would love to see California take a system on like this. I
don't have a problem with it. I think it should be a uniform system across the country. I understand everybody's got their own way of doing it, but I think we do elections well here in Tennessee. I just wish more people voted.
I wish people would vote. I really do. I wish people would get out and vote. Man, wow, we've covered a lot of stuff. Talking a little bit more about this election that's coming up with Trump and Harris. I mean, what do you see as far as the Senate? What do you see happening? Trump gets elected. What do you see? I'm going to ask your prediction. If Trump were to get elected, how do you see this thing rolling out?
4 years.
Well, the first year, I'll just tell you, I really don't want to see, and we talked about this earlier, and I noticed we've had some comments on this, executive orders. I don't want to see a lot of executive orders. I'd like to see our legislators go in and do their job. I know we have had a very divided Senate and House, and it's been so divided, they're playing off the independents to get things done. That's just the way it is. And the independents kind of have a power play going right now.
Oh, sure.
Because they're begging them to come to either side.
You want me to tell you what I really think will happen?
Sure.
Gridlock.
You think so?
I think either way, I'm just taking recent history as the precedent for future.
I feel like there's going to be gridlock. I feel like we're not going to get a lot done. I'm worried about that. I don't want that.
The problem is on both sides, the moderates in both parties have been run out. Joe Manchin on the Democratic side is going to be gone. John Tester's likely to be gone on the Democratic side from Montana. You tell me who in the Republican side that if Kamala Harris gets in there, will sit down with her and come up with a bipartisan deal. The gentleman from Oklahoma, James Langford, who wrote the immigration bill, the bipartisan immigration deal that Trump basically killed, he's been ridiculed by his party members as being a traitor because he sat down with her and did that. On both sides, there is no incentive anymore to compromise to get things done because you'll basically be labeled as a traitor and be hurting your party's chances. But you're there to do a job, to get things done. And at the end of the day, I think people will reward that. I mean, good government should be rewarded. And the only way good government happens is if we compromise and Democrats and Republicans work together like they used to. It's like when Reagan worked with Tip O'Neill and even Bill Clinton worked with Newt Gingrich, even though we impeached him. That's the way things have to do, and the country does
the 90s, I think anyone you talk to in any political party, they will say the 90s was almost a different country than what it is right now. Talking about the 1990s. I remember the 1990s.
It was a boom time.
It was a boom time. Things went very well. Not everything was perfect. I don't think it was perfect on either side. I don't want to try to say that, but there was a lot of things that were done because our country could work together.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about the direction I'm seeing this. It just seems more divided all the time. And it's almost like they don't have something to argue about. They'll just find something. They'll make something to argue. I think the Indigenous Peoples Day, I think that's just one example where it's like, why would you have to change that? Why does that have to be a political issue?
And I agree with that. And on the other side, you were talking earlier about what was it in Oklahoma? School system there was wanting to put a Trump Bible in every school.
Yep.
That was just to gouge Democrats, and it goes on both sides. It's just like trying to rename the Rosa Parks Boulevard in Nashville the Trump Boulevard. There was no reason to even bring that up except to gouge the other side. And those are the kind of games that we play with each other that really divides people. And gets people hyped up and makes people believe that we have so much difference between us when in fact there's a lot more common ground than media gives us credit for.
Well, and I know some people have things they won't compromise on, and I understand that. And there's things that I can't compromise on, but there are some things I can compromise on. I can compromise when it comes to on local things. We've had a lot of issue with talking about the trash in Lawrence County. And I listen to a lot of different ideas and come up with something that works for everyone? Absolutely. Hey, I throw stuff away. You throw stuff away. I don't want to dump in our community. I'll tell you that. I don't want to dump in the county. I'd rather transport it out of this county and keep our waterways clean if we can and put it into existing.
Well, conservatives locally have come around the fact that you probably have to raise fees sometime.
Our fee went up on us.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a trickle down effect.
Republicans
when things go up,
have total control just about in the county and raising solid waste from $54 to over $100, and now looking at raising the wheel tax. And all you heard last election was, "I'm a conservative against taxes and overreach of government." Well, I try to tell you, not everything's about Democrats and Republicans, and it's not so cut and dry once you're in there. But nobody wanted to listen. But they're seeing now that sometimes you have to do what's not popular.
Well, what do you lean more for? Do you lean more for a wheel tax or do you lean more for a property tax?
I don't think you need either one right now. We left them 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when I left office with T.R. Williams, we left them a fund balance that the county had never seen, over $9 million. And that's a budget that was future proof. You wouldn't have to raise any kind of revenue for years if you didn't want to. So, I mean, I understand there's a need to fix our roads, but they just did a bond issue, which is to be commended. They got Ryan Creek some money to improve the roads. No, I mean, I think it's a false choice.
I'm going to ding you on this one a little bit. I'm going to come back at you a little bit because what we've had though over the past few years is we've had to deal with the price of everything going up. I mean, and
years, I know
Lawrence County has been hit hard with the fact of you had other surrounding counties paying first responders better than what first responders, police officers were making here. So we were training police officers in our county. And as soon as they got their time in, I'm not upset with them for doing it. I think everybody has to do what works good for them. They get a job offer to go to another county and make $5 more per hour.
Be competitive.
You're going to have to do it. And so on some of that, I have to say it's cost us more to get things done. So on the county commission, I've been in a lot of their commission meetings. I've seen these guys really sweating it out. Now they all walk out there and they're friends when they walk out, but I've seen them having some conversations that are not easy to have.
All I'm saying is,
there,
if you're going to do that, don't put "I'm a fiscally conservative person" on the cards when you run for re-election, or that I'm opposed to tax increases. And that's what they all did 4 years ago. And that's fine because that's reality. Sometimes you have to raise revenue. That's not a bad thing. That's just reality.
Our taxes
just be
in
consistent
this county
with what you
are going to go up.
Yes.
Let me say this. People could say, "Well, you're not a Republican." I want to tell you what got me involved locally, and I don't know that I've ever told many people this, but I lived in Murray County. Well, I'm not originally from Murray County, but I lived in Murray County for about 12 years, and I watched what was happening with Spring Hill, Columbia, and Mount Pleasant. And we came to live in Lawrence County, and as I was here, I started seeing the same pattern with Summertown.
Yeah.
Then you have Lawrenceburg, and you have the lower towns, further down, all the way down even to St. Joe. What happened in Murray County is you had people in Mount Pleasant getting their taxes raised so they could build schools in Spring Hill.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Right.
And they were very upset about it in Murray County. Rightly so. I understand it. So you got a guy that's living in Mount Pleasant that their school systems in Mount Pleasant are decrepit, and people can call me and get mad at me over that.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, they're old and they need to be replaced.
Yeah.
And there's cracks in the walls. It's bad.
Yeah.
And yet, I was active. I was vocal in Murray County because I watched them build a $6 million football field at Spring Hill High School.
Yeah.
At the same time, while we needed new schools in Mount Pleasant. And what I'll tell you, Chris, is I see this pattern coming for Lawrence County. What my role in it is, I don't know, but I can't stand aside and just watch and say, well, it's not going to happen here. I hear local people say, we don't want growth here. I get that. You can't stop people from coming in and buying property. You can't stop people from coming here and building, and it's going to happen. Lawrence County is a beautiful county.
Yeah.
It's clean. We have clean rivers. Buffalo River is one of the cleanest rivers in the state of Tennessee.
We don't have codes.
We don't have very many codes. It's easy to build here, and it's very attractive. We have 4 lanes going, one north and south, one east and west. I'm just saying things that everybody already knows.
It's attractive county.
This is a very good place to live. And so we are going to see questions come up in the future about how are we going to deal with new school systems?
Sure.
How are we going to deal? And I just want to encourage our county commissioners and even the city commissioner for Lawrenceburg here in town. I just want to encourage them. Hey, be proactive, guys. Be thinking about what we're going to do down the road.
You sound like a Democrat.
Well, you can call me whatever you want to, but I hope I got some common sense that we are going to see change coming to this county.
I like to hear that.
And I'm not opposed to it, but preparing for the change, I think, is going to be very important, or otherwise we're going to see property taxes jump.
Yeah.
Tremendous. What have we seen in Williamson County? And I'm a little older than you, but Williamson County property taxes there are so high now that what was once a farming community, you can't afford to own a farm in Williamson County.
No, there's very few middle class people living there now.
That's right. Average income in Williamson County is $100,000 a year. Average income, not household.
Yeah.
Average income.
By comparison, I think Lawrence County's is what, in the 30,000s, 40,000?
I think 34 to 40, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Big discrepancy.
Big difference. Murray County property taxes, leaps and bounds going up. Can you remember this? I kind of got into some debates with some of the school board members in Murray County. Let me be clear. This was Murray County a few years ago. When school would start every year, it would be on the news, Murray County, we don't have enough money to run the school buses. Yeah. And so finally, I just told them, I said, they ought to fire every one of you guys and start all over.
Yeah.
Because the job is to make sure we're going to budget for school buses to run in Murray County.
Right.
Because every year they would say, oh, no, it's August, school's starting back. Like it was a surprise. It was something different. We can't do that here. And I don't think we are. I think these guys are having this conversation. I'm not picking on any of I think all of our county commissioners are paying attention.
Yeah.
Who I'm speaking to right now is not the elected officials. I'm trying to talk to those citizens that live in our community and say, you need to be thinking. We need to be coming to our community town hall meetings. We need to get involved in these things so that we can work together, because we're all going to be facing these problems. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, minding your trash has got to be hauled somewhere. You're going to go to school somewhere.
I would be interested. We do take comments on our live stream.
Sure.
I would be interested to see what the people think. Would you guys be willing to pay an extra $50 or $100 on the wheel tax if it improved our roads? I believe that was the proposal that was going to be put on the ballot that they ended up pulling. I think they'll probably look at it maybe next year. I don't know. But, I mean, if they put it up to a referendum, people will get to vote on it. So I would be interested to see what people think.
Well, we're going to have the conversation. And, I think for citizens, even for some elected officials, sometimes it's not a fun conversation to have.
It's never fun.
And, a lot of people want to put things on the property taxes. Me, Chris, personally, I'm not for any more property taxes. I think property taxes are as high as they need to be. It's hard on the elderly folks. It's very hard on folks. A wheel tax does seem to be more balanced across the county.
And it's never been raised.
And I'm not for a wheel tax. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not a proponent for, hey, let's raise taxes. I've always been a proponent for, and I think as conservatives will say this, look, let's try to look at what revenue we're raising, and let's do better with what we have coming in. Let's look at what we can do. But on the county commissioners, in their defense, there's some of these budgets that they're not allowed to cut by the state.
Sure.
There are several parts of our budget here in this county, and average citizen Joe and Susie may not know this if they've never
The two
been
big
involved.
ones, the road department and the school board.
And the school board.
You fund them, but you can't cut them because there's a thing called maintenance of effort.
That's right.
You've got to give them at least the same dollar amount that you gave them last.
That's right. So we can't go in there and go, well, we're just going to cut some things back this year. And I think a lot of taxpayers in this county don't know.
They don't know it, and they shouldn't. I mean,
right. But it helps them. It helps our citizens be informed so that we can take a look at this and go, hey, what are we going to do? We've got a lot of water boards in this community. We've got a lot of things. And honestly, these things are probably going to be changing in the future. They're not going to stay the same. What are we going to do with the growth that's coming into Summertown? And we can solve these problems. They're not unsolvable.
Right.
This is not the old television show Unsolved Mysteries where we just leave and we don't know what we're going to do.
Right.
Even to not make a decision is to make a decision.
Sure.
To delay, even to just kick the can down the road, they say in politics a lot, that's making a decision as well. And sometimes that's the worst thing you can do is kick it down the road. We've done that with too many things in this country.
Oh, absolutely. And talking about schools, we had a school plan that would have built a new school in Summertown and Loretta a few years back. When we did that, which was about 2015, price of each school was around $25 million. Right now, if you tried to build that same blueprint, it would probably be around $60 million for each school. So the costs are just outrageous to build something like that. And, that's a big inhibitor, especially in small communities like this. But there's going to come a time, like you said, where you're going to have new facilities. You can only put a Band-Aid on things for so long. And, with the population growth in the north end of the county, Summertown may need a new school at some point.
Oh, just with the census numbers going up, you have to accommodate. And the state will make you do that. It's not like we can go, well, we're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
You can't just say we're not going to do it. The state requires that. And even on the trash issue, a lot of people don't realize this. The state requires our county to take care of the trash.
Yeah.
So when the bill went up for the county, guess what? The bill goes up for the citizens. And that's just what happens.
That's the way the world works.
And unfortunately, that's the trickle down effect.
But all I'm saying on what I was saying earlier about the people running as conservatives, just be consistent in what you say. If you've raised taxes and wanted to raise taxes, don't say on your campaign paraphernalia, I'm not going to raise taxes. Be level with the people, and most of the people will have a little bit of grace and understand that. Don't snow them and say that I'm a conservative against taxes, and then you came and proposed all kinds of tax increases.
Well, I'm going to take up for them. I think our conservative commissioners have done an excellent job. I think all of our commissioners have done an excellent job. I'm just going to say that. I don't. This is me personally, from what I've seen. I don't think that the Democratic group in our county that I'm seeing, and we've got some old Democrats in there. I don't see them wanting to raise taxes. As a matter of fact, I've seen them go kicking and screaming, saying, don't raise anything.
My buddy Wayne Yoakum, who's a staunch Democrat, been on there 32 years, probably the most conservative person on that board, and
that's a Chris Jackson idea. I don't know. We love you, Mr. Yoakum.
We need to have him on the show. He would probably, he may get us fined by the FEC, but it would still be.
He may get everybody fired and burn the building down for it.
Most conservative guy you'll ever meet, but he's a Democrat.
Well, I'll say this. The Democrat Party has moved away from anyone that's conservative as a whole as a national party. They've picked out anyone that wants to be there. I believe that there's a lot of people in Lawrence County that if you were to talk to them, you would think you're very conservative, your beliefs, your cultural beliefs, your religious beliefs. I think they line up more with the Republican Party than they do the Democrat Party. I think there's a lot of people here. I know me, Chris, personally, if you just took who I am and you just took a notebook paper and started writing down just basic facts about me, and then you lined it up with the Democrat Party and you handed that piece of paper to a lot of people in the Democrat Party and you say, hey, this guy would like to be a part of you, they would probably look at it and say, no way, we don't want him. I'm just being honest. I mean, they wouldn't want me. They do not line up with my values. They do not.
I think that's where you get into nuance. You would probably say that you don't agree with killing babies and you don't agree with gay marriage and all those issues, where there's always nuance. No Democrat that I know wants to kill babies. We understand that there's certain circumstances that an abortion has to be an option. And as terrible as that is, that's just the reality of the situation.
I'm going to have to say, I'm going to have to disagree on this one. even Tim Walz, who is on the ballot right now as vice president, he signed into legislation one of the most liberal abortion bills of any state in the United States. I mean, there is no restriction in that state up to the point of birth that stops a woman from having an abortion. And at some point, Chris, we got to say that if you go in and you're pregnant and you terminate that pregnancy, whatever verbiage you want to use, that's a child that is a viable life that literally could live outside the womb, and there's nothing there. And so the vice president, and so here's my point. Here's my point. I think that's moving further to the left for the party as a whole.
Well, I would say that your party's moved further to the right by taking that right away from women. This is going to be the first generation of women in this country to be born with less rights than their mothers had. Think about that. Taking this right away that Roe v. Wade established as a national right is gone. It's left up to individual states, and you're having these women that live in these conservative states have high-risk pregnancies that their lives are in danger. Having to travel to New York and, North Carolina and all these other states, and they're almost dying themselves. That's a real problem. And
let me respond, because I believe we're going to have another generation of people that actually have a chance at living because Roe v. Wade has been overturned. And how many human beings have been aborted, and use whatever verb you want to put on that. But how many people, their lives never made it? How many people now, because that's been overturned, how many more people will be alive today, be alive 10 years from now? So let's turn it around the other way. And I see how you're saying we're taking women's rights. But what I'd like to say is, and this is the way I see it, that now we have instituted more human rights for babies than have had. And babies have more human rights than they ever have. I don't want to take any right away from the mother. That mother doesn't want to raise that child for whatever reason. No questions asked. No one will get upset with her for giving that child up. But let's let the child live.
That's like I said a couple episodes ago. I'm personally pro-life. I could never have an abortion or support one, within my family. But I understand the need for them in certain circumstances, and I believe Roe v. Wade afforded that right to women. But, and it went by trimesters. You could not have an abortion late term under Roe. That didn't happen anywhere. It left the decision with the woman, her doctor, and her God. And that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be up to Brett Kavanaugh, Donald Trump, or any governor in this country. It should reside with the woman. That's just the way I look at it.
Well, you told me a while back when we first started the show, it's been a few weeks ago, we even did a little promo, and we were talking about that we're both used. I proclaim to be a Christian. I'm not a perfect person.
Right.
Well, Christian means you follow Jesus, who's perfect. Sure, me. And you said the same thing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me, and I think it's hard for a lot of other conservatives, that when I hear you or I hear any Democrat, I don't want to single you out, but when I hear a Democrat say, I'm pro-life, but yet I see what's coming in, and literally Tim Walz is like, we want to provide this opportunity for women to have an abortion. And I mean, he's late-term abortion pro guy. I mean, it's reality. I mean, it's easy to prove it. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. He has a right to make a stand however he wants to. There's a lot of folks like me that look at a guy like Chris Jackson or anyone else, you fill in the blank on the name, and say, I don't know how you could vote for these people.
Well, on the flip side, I find it hard to believe how Christian conservatives can vote for Donald Trump, a man who's been divorced 3 times, been adjudicated civilly rape, has 34 counts, felony counts.
You're asking a question.
You're going to say that he's the lesser of 2 evils.
No, I'm not, because I hate that. I hate saying lesser of 2 evils, and I've heard it a lot.
Give me a Christian defense of Donald Trump.
I'll tell you what I vote on. I don't vote on personality. I vote on policy.
That ain't what y'all said during the Bill Clinton years.
Not y'all. Let me tell you what Brandon Taylor is.
That's right.
I vote on policy. And if you vote on policy, Chris, you'll be a Republican for.
Oh boy. Well, I'm glad we established. Bill Clinton would be interested in this conversion from the moral majority that y'all had during the 90s.
I'll take Bill Clinton 10-1 over Harris. Bring him back. Come on back, Bill. Back out of Arkansas. Don't stand.
He's still younger than Donald Trump. So you guys are.
I believe nowadays this party is so far to the left I don't think they want Bill Clinton in their party.
Bill Clinton was just out campaigning for Kamala Harris yesterday.
I know what Bill Clinton's doing, and I know how.
Do y'all have any former presidents campaigning for Donald Trump? I know you don't have any former vice presidents
I
because
wish
you wanted
Reagan
to
was
hang the
still
last
around.
one.
We had the guy that played Reagan. He's campaigning for him.
Count for something. Actually like him.
He's good, but I'm just saying it how I feel it. But I do. I don't know what
you feel about Trump.
But I don't vote on personality. I'm not going to vote on personality.
We don't understand y'all. And that's a lot of the. It's where, as Americans, we're going to have to listen to each other.
Sure,
because we don't.
That's what we're sitting here doing.
And that doesn't mean I hate you. I mean, I don't have to not talk to you.
Right.
Let's talk through it, understand it, and sometimes we'll just have to agree to disagree.
And it's okay if we disagree.
Nothing wrong with it. Bro.
Right. That's right. Well, on Monday, October 28th, 10:30 to 11:30 a.m., we're going to have a Get Out the Vote rally at Lawrence County at the square. It'll be in the city there. I think it's going to be part of the Speaker Cameron Sexton coming through Lawrence County. It's just encouraging people to vote.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think anyone will be welcome to come out. Doesn't matter. They're not going to check your party affiliation if you come out, but I think it will be good. It's rallying, get out the vote. Let's get out and vote, and let's let our voices be heard.
And on November 5th, the Democratic Party is going to have a victory party because Kamala Harris is about to be elected president. So,
well,
we invite everybody.
Well, no matter what, I hope we have a result. I'll say that.
I don't think we will on election night, but I just hope everybody acts responsibly and we have an outcome we can all respect, and there's a peaceful transfer of power in January.
That's right. I agree. That's what we want. Well, I don't know how much time we got left, but we're close to the end.
Charlotte, how much? She's not listening.
Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, listening to our show, and being a part of this. And God bless Lawrence County.
I think next time we're actually going to take questions in real time. She tells us we're going to have a monitor to read your questions and comments, so that will be fun.
Yeah, that's
fun too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep it classy.
Keep it clean. That's all we.
What's the Anchorman said in the movie Stay Classy? Stay classy, San Diego.
That sounds good. That sounds great.
I think she'll have to cut the last out, I guess. Yeah. My hands are being cold.